My name is Ryan Vesely. Thanks very much for joining us here. I'm the Vice President of Customer Success and Technical Services at Sauce Labs. I've been here for about 2.5 years, and I look over anything from customer success to technical support to the pre-sales group. And prior to Sauce, I've been at companies such as Salesforce or New Relic, and really kind of just honing in on the DevOps space and understanding what makes that world tick, either from a production side of things or obviously in this case from a QA or testing point of view. And as we're noticing, really these things are starting to blend more and more. And we're starting to see that there's different questions that are being asked by the different groups that are really trying to get to the same answers about what is it that enables us to think about software in a way that really drives that level of confidence of that we're providing the best possible software to our users and our customers. In the past decade or so, we've seen a massive shift of the way that people think about software and the way that users interact with software, where we're not just reliant on the desktop anymore or a browser, but really it's the app. It's the way that we interact with almost everything these days is a mobile phone or a tablet. And how we interact with that really has a dramatic impact on how we feel about that service that's being provided, that company that we're doing business with. We see it all over the place. Obviously, this slide's talking about finance, healthcare, and retail, but really any industry has this going on. Think about travel. When we used to be able to travel, you would be able to board your plane using your phone or your watch. For healthcare, I mean, I've got a family that we're always thinking about making sure that we're as healthy as possible. So we have well visits with our doctors, and all of that communication is done over the app. I can actually email my doctor directly, not some attendant or some service, but literally my doctor right from my phone and talk to them through the app so that we can reference, whether they're test results or whether there are other types of things that are going on that I need to talk about. And it's all within that experience. And because I trust that experience, I'm willing to do more of that. And I think that really is a hallmark of how we think about software and how we think about people interacting with the software going forward. And what that ultimately means is because that app is so important, we need to be thinking about how do we encourage people to do more with that app, get more engaged with the software through that environment, and really try to create a welcoming experience for them so that they want to do more with the service itself. And really the way that we do that is we think about this concept of digital confidence. And digital confidence, when you first hear the word, you think about it from a point of view of, I'm confident that the software that I'm providing to you is perfect. I have gone through all the tests. I have made sure that the code is right, and that I am extremely confident that the that the software that I'm putting out there is doing what I want it to do, and that people are ready to interact with it. But there's another layer of digital confidence, and that's where if I'm creating software and sending it to my users will then have confidence in my ability to provide a great experience. So really making sure that we have that concept of making sure that they have confidence in us just as much as we are confident that we're treating them with the utmost respect and obviously the best possible experience going forward. And really the way that you can do that is by thinking about ensuring that you're looking at the tests of the software before that software ever hits the user's experience themselves. We want to ensure that you have the knowledge and the confidence that you have the best possible experience pushed out to them before they ever interact with them. So ultimately, then why is this important? Why is this something that we need to be thinking about? Well, if you look at not just the experience, of course we all want to create great software and we want to make sure that the experiences are there, but it goes deeper than that. In the companies for which we work, obviously they're in it from a standpoint of making a profit, and this business ultimately is what's really driving some of these decisions. And a lot of the various different analysts that are out there have done studies on this and proven that really this concept of experience, especially in the mobile world, but really anywhere with software, really drives the way people do business with other companies going forward. So just as the slide says here, McKinsey and company have figured out that by looking at their various different surveys, 25% of the customers will flat out abandon a brand after just one bad experience. Imagine how many times, or think about how many times you've downloaded an app, launched it, even if it's a game, you launch it, it crashes the first time. Are you really going to try that again? I'm not. I'm done with it. So I'm out. And I probably won't try that manufacturer's software again because it felt like it was a bad experience. I no longer trust them. Same thing with Harvard Business Review, right? So on the flip side of it, if you think about it from a point of view of not having people leave your service, but how we engender more loyalty and get them to spend more time and more money with us, then what we find is that the best experiences result in 140% or more additional spend from those customers inside of that software. So there's actual benefit of providing user experience that's perfect beyond just the gut feel of it. And then again, on the last one here, you can see that 41% of the customers have either full-on stopped spending altogether or simply have decreased the spend. So it's kind of the same point, but made from different points of view, that ultimately the way that the experience is felt by the user directly correlates to how much time and money they're going to spend with those organizations. So how do you do? How do you know that you're providing that best possible experience? Well, you have to have digital confidence. And ultimately, that's what Sauce Labs is really designed to do, is to create that world full of digital confidence. The way we do it is we think about it from a point of view of all the facets of information that we have. So we are committed absolutely to the open source. A lot of the information that we have coming from the industry is what's correlated to our roadmap. Thinking about what's driving advancements in Selenium and Appium, or whether we're talking about native frameworks, things like XCUI or Espresso on the mobile side of things, or if you're thinking about, just all the various different frameworks that are out there that we can use and languages that we can support. There's a rich open source community that drives this. And then also being thoughtful about how we can bring expertise across the board into those areas, and not only ensure that we support those key areas of ability, but also support you in your advancement by giving you guidance and bringing those experts into play. Titus, for example, is one of those. Cody is another one who's going to be talking here in a bit. Just thinking about how we can always find ways to improve the way that we go about doing this to help build out that digital confidence. Obviously, there's a lot more to cover here. I don't have a ton of time to talk into each one of these in detail, but I wanted to hit those two in particular because I think they really are some of the most important things to consider. How we think about the industry and how it's evolving and taking that into consideration as we build our own product, and also how we think about the expertise that's required and the knowledge that we can bring to bear to help you further your own programs. This manifests in the solution itself. So we start off with a scalable, always-on architecture that has a whole bunch of different functionalities available within it. You've got headless browsers, you've got the mobile pieces we talked about already, you've got devices and emulators and simulators and all sorts of different tools at your fingertips where you can start to run these tests. But more importantly, on top of that, we have the tools to help you interpret the results of those tests. And that will in turn help you make better decisions about your software. Go, no go, certainly, but also be thinking about programs, right? How are we ensuring that the software that we're going forward with into production is constantly improving? And if it's not, if we've introduced something, how do we roll back as fast as we can? That gets more onto the shift right side of things, but that's an important consideration to have in mind. When you think about that user experience again, there's also more facets than just does it work, right? That's the old way of testing and thinking about it. Does it work or not? Can the flow actually succeed? Does the user journey work? Well, great, it works, but what if it's really slow? Or what if it's really hard to find the right button to press? Or what if it's just messy in the way that it looks? All of those things impact the emotional impact of the user using that particular tool or software. And it may not immediately show that it doesn't work, but it does have a negative impact on their experience. And you will start to see that as a result of of reviews that you'd be getting in app stores, or just the products themselves and the overall spend. It's an emotional element, and it can be a snap judgment. So making sure that we take advantage of that and have control over as much as we possibly can before we push to production becomes so important. And that, of course, again, this leads into that concept of digital confidence. The other piece of it is security. So wrapping all of this around in a secure environment and ensuring that you have the support that you require to go forward and use these tools is super important as well. Ultimately, all of this boils up and becomes what we call the Sauce Labs Continuous Testing Cloud. Really what that's talking about is having access to these tools and going forward into other areas of testing that we'll talk about here in a minute that allows you to make sure that you have the greatest possible confidence in your software so that you in turn can push that code out to production as fast as possible with the confidence that it does what you want it to do. And your users will build their confidence in your brand that you're providing the best possible software for them as well. Okay, so shifting gears a little bit in terms of how this comes into play, this is certainly an element of what we've seen in the past in terms of how testing has changed over time. It used to be the long pole in the tent. We're starting to see it obviously happening more and more frequently across the board throughout the test or throughout the software development lifecycle. So you'll see that testing happens not just in test, but it's happening in production, or it's happening as you're right before you deploy it, or as you're coding it itself. Developers are starting to want to get their hands on these results as they're developing the code, not just developing the code and pushing it off to a QA department to have them ultimately tell them where the bugs are. So as we start to see that continuous testing really come into play, what we're really seeing happen is an evolution of the way people think about test. So there's test during test, which is the classic way of looking at it. There's test during production, or if you will, shipping right, thinking about how code operates and working with monitors that are out there to look at the telemetry that's available and combining that together with a better informed way so that you can make decisions about go, no go, or where you want to spend your investment time within your software based on what you think is right on the tests, comparing that together with what's happening on the monitoring space. I'll give you an example. You might say, for example, that you've run a series of tests that tell you that the integration line works, nothing has broken, and that the key critical flows for the user have worked perfectly. You push that out to code, and you've informed your operations team, here's where the tests show where the hotspots might be, where we passed all our tests, but this might be a weak area. Monitors will look at that. They'll look at the real users that are coming in and taking a look at how all of that factors in and really providing that evidence to show you where people are spending their time. They will absolutely be able to tell you, yes, your tests are right. We are working correctly. But they may also be able to tell you, hey, there's this other hotspot that you never thought about that's not included in your tests, but it's breaking and people are leaving at that point. You might want to start testing on that. So you have instantly made your monitors more effective because you can finely tune them and tell them where the hotspots might be from what your tests are telling you. And you've made your tests more effective because those monitors in turn can tell you areas that you might be missing that are equally important to your overall experience. Working together in that way provides that level of digital confidence on the right-hand side of things. Shifting to the left then, thinking about the developer, getting information in their hands quicker before they wait for the tests to be run makes them that much more prolific in the way that they can create software and push that into production. They can fix it as they're writing it, as opposed to waiting for somebody else to tell them later on down the road. So we're looking at ways that we can have that developer experience enhanced with the software that we're providing. That's one of the key areas that we're focusing in on in terms of roadmap. So we want to be mindful of what we're trying to accomplish, both in 2020 and beyond 2020. First and foremost, without a doubt, we want to be fast, reliable, and performant. All software breaks. This happens. All software has issues that we have to respond to. We want to make sure that we're on top of that. We have had some incidents, to be fully transparent, in the past. We're doing everything we possibly can to make improvements on that at the infrastructure level. What that might mean is to your end users, you may not see it directly inside of the UI, but you will see an experience improvement as we go forward and make sure that is exactly that, fast, reliable, and performant as we go forward from here. We also, as I had just mentioned, are focusing in on the developer experience, finding ways to work with developer mindsets so that we're not just waiting for the code to be complete and listening to product managers and doing the journey that we're talking about, but enabling the developers to test as fast as they possibly can. So we're looking at integrations into things like Puppeteer or Playwright or Test Cafe or Cypress, or really anything that's out there in terms of running these tests locally and enabling developers to have those tests inform them in the moment. That's something that we're focusing on as well. For longtime users of SaaS, you probably know that there are we've made a couple of acquisitions in the past, and those experiences are not yet unified. So Screener, for example, our visual testing solution, is still a standalone product. We're looking at folding that under the overall user experience for SaaS Labs. Same thing with our real device cloud and thinking about how we can fully complete that transition from what used to be called test objects into, again, the entire real device set for SaaS Labs. Having that unified experience makes it easier for your folks to be able to adopt the technology, to learn how to use it, and ultimately have a seamless experience no matter where they're testing, whether it's real devices or visual or even on the web browsers themselves. And then on top of everything else, of course, everybody's always interested in analytics, looking at test failure analytics, looking at other types of information around the sea of data that we're collecting from all the tests that our customers have, so we can benchmark across that, which is in production right now, and we can help you understand some key areas to measure your success and find areas to improve, but at the same time get you more automated analytics to show you where we can see improvements and trajectories of your tests so that you have that flexibility at your hands going forward. So all of that comes down to thinking about it from a point of view of, first and foremost, personas on the far left, and then a bit more about where we are in terms of mid and long term as well as the current focus. So, and again, I'm not going to go through all of this because I know we're short on time, but, the QA or the SDET persona, they want that ease of seamless interaction. So unifying that experience is what's really driving a lot of the investment on that side. Getting into, again, thinking about it from a point of view of self-service and making people really easy to join the SaaS community and have that functionality at the fingertips is another piece that's more mid and long-term going forward. And what that means ultimately is when you think about self-service, typically people think about it from a point of view of, some small startup somewhere trying to get in and pay with a credit card and get that going. That absolutely is a focus of self-service from one point of view. There's another point of view that really any customer should be thinking about as well that is equally relevant for self-service, and that's onboarding of the user. A new person on your team starts to use SaaS Labs, be sure that they have the ability to adopt that tool and get into using it as fast as possible and kind of coach them through that process. That methodology has to work both in self-service as well as across all of our customer base. And that's a key element of where we're focusing in and ensuring people have that kind of flexibility and knowledge. On the platform side, again, thinking about some more of the back-end types of things and ensuring that we have better improvement on security controls and team management as well as billing and being able to control that so that you can do better chargebacks and you can have better allocation management of your various different resources. And be thinking about how you can have a variety of a mixture of solutions that are available to your teams that are relevant for them. And then on the developer side, we've kind of already talked a little bit about this. Be thinking about it from a point of view of, again, that failure analysis, continuing to invest in various different tools like the native frameworks that I have mentioned before, or the more kind of on the rise tooling that's out there that talks about enabling developers themselves to be thinking about how they can get access to those test results in the moment and take advantage of that and fix the code going forward before waiting or before pushing it off to a traditional QA cycle. And really kind of honing in on that continuous testing promise that we're talking about. So all of these things coupled together with an API focus of really making everything available via APIs going forward is really kind of the core focus of the 2020 timeline. There are other things beyond 2020 that are also, that have been planned out and that we're working toward. We're not going to go over that today, but if you have interest in getting a deeper level of information on any of these topics or more of the go-forward plans, let us know, reach out to us, and we're happy to set up follow-on, a deeper dive conversation to help you understand what that looks like for both you as well as your teams going forward.